Greetings and salutations, fellow questioners. We are going to talk about the Titan sub tragedy. Um, we are recording this on Saturday, June 24th. So if there's any other breaking news, we can only do by what we've got at the moment. So the sub was lost on this past Sunday. They lost communications and the transponder at the same time, and it was announced Sunday evening that they lost contact. And of course, it's been the number one news story up into really, it's still the number one news story, right? It's moved from can they save them to whose fault is it, right? And they're trying to find ways to blame it. And of course, now the CEO is fighting with James Cameron. We're going to talk about why he's fighting with James Cameron here in a second. But Donnie, I know you've been interested in the science of the depths of what's going on with this. So let's give a little background information to that real quick, if you could.
Okay, so the name of the company was Ocean Gate, or is, and it was founded by the guy who designed the sub, Stockton Rush, who was a CEO and had an engineering background. A lot has come to light about the CEO. A lot more people have been paying attention to some of the talks that he's been giving on the media about his design philosophy for the sub. And yeah, and on this past Sunday, it was lost. It was a Pakistani businessman and his son, a billionaire and a French explorer, taking it down on the submersible Titan, down to the depths of about 4,000 feet, I believe it was.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. To the wreckage of the Titanic, which everyone knows, off of Newfoundland and Canada in the Atlantic Ocean. And like Jason mentioned before, the transponder and the communications all failed at the same time. There was as we all well know, media has been following it very carefully.
Yep.
The search and rescue operation that went on until about Thursday, when the news came out that they pretty much declared all aboard that submersible to be dead.
Yes. So where this has eaten up a lot of bandwidth, and a lot of people were asking, even by the time Tuesday and Wednesday were rolling around, it's like, why is this the number one story in America? Like, don't get me wrong, it's people's lives, or at this point we all thought that there was the possibility, because they talked about the possibility of hearing banging noises, that possibly they were still alive, that it was sort of a race against time. So you had that element, but a lot of people, really, is this the number one story, considering some of the other things that were going on? And so even by Tuesday and Wednesday, people were starting to question why this was the big story. And then, of course, Thursday night or Thursday afternoon, after they've officially been declared dead, right? Because they were talking about 90 hours of air, and I've heard some other people saying there at no point did they have 90 hours of air. Like, there was never a possibility. So, okay, where did that number come from? And a lot of people started looking more closely, because that Thursday afternoon, after everyone knew they were dead, like there was like they were gone, the Navy announces that, again, using the technology that they have, not just hydrophones, but even more advanced technology, they said that they heard the implosion, and they're saying, we believe it now to be the implosion of the Titan submersible vehicle. And so everyone kind of stopped and said, hold up. You mean you knew this thing was gone Sunday evening? You knew that this thing had imploded. Now, why didn't you just tell us this on almost a week ago? You knew this thing was gone. I think I want to be a little cautious here. Some people say, there's a difference between saying there was an anomalous sound, right, and knowing for certain that what you heard was the implosion of the submersible vehicle, right? So if I'm the Navy, I could easily see that being something you'd want to say, saying, hey, we're not going to come out and say that we know what this is if it's not that. We just have this anomalous sound. I think that's fair for the Navy not to have come out and said anything necessary until they could confirm it, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, this is where I kind of take a look back at the media, because I've got links to everything I'm about to say below. James Cameron recently did a video in an interview where he said he was flat out sending emails Monday morning saying that this sub had suffered a catastrophic failure and imploded. And he based it on two very important points of evidence that was publicly available. One, they lost communications and the transponder at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, to the layman, me, that doesn't mean anything. It's like, okay, well, you had a catastrophic, if there was some sort of catastrophic electrical failure, then that would make sense. He points out that on submersible vehicles like this, that transponder is in its own compartment. It has its own battery. So for it to be lost at the same time as the communications are lost, you're looking at a critical failure. That's not somebody lost. That's not the sub lost power or has electrical issues.
That
It's
means
entirely,
that means
it's
the
gone.
sub got destroyed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Second point is it isn't just the Navy's advanced hydrophones and sonar technology that caught the implosion. Publicly accessible hydrophones also heard a bang. At the same time, the sub has what has to be a critical failure. So you combine that with James Cameron saying he's publicly talked about how this submersible vehicle was made from a composite of titanium and carbon nanofibers, which was very controversial because, and James Cameron was amongst other people saying, you cannot do this. You cannot use this technology to go down to these depths. It's unsafe. And while I disagree with James Cameron on a number of issues, there's two things I'm going to listen to that man about. One is making movies, and two is anything to do with submersible technology, because he is a subject matter expert in that.
Yeah, he went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, which is way harder than going down to Titanic depths.
Right.
Way harder.
He's been doing this for decades. He made the movie Titanic because of his love for this stuff. Like, he is a legitimate expert in this field. So it wasn't just him, though, who was saying, hey, you can't be doing this stuff. So it was a lot of other engineers who were saying, who will tell you, you has to be a unihull craft. It has to be made of the same material.
Yep.
It's not it's like, it isn't a one-time thing. It's these imperfections happen over time. 4, 5, 6, 7 trips down to those kinds of pressures.
Yeah.
It will eventually collapse. So he was saying this stuff Monday morning, and the news media never talked about it at all. It's not like this information wasn't easily accessible to everyone. It was. So the question becomes, why wasn't the story Monday morning? Billionaires believed dead after possible catastrophic implosion. Navy and Coast Guard are looking for the wreckage. Like, it was never a possibility that there had been a catastrophic implosion when that was the most likely explanation Sunday evening. They knew all this. So why didn't they report it? A lot of people have suggested that the news media deliberately misled all of us as to what happened to this submersible for the following reasons. And again, I'm going to have links to everything I'm about to say, articles, videos in the description below, assuming YouTube isn't going to be,
and real quick, for those of you who didn't watch the James Cameron interview,
yes,
he basically points out that at one point he did encounter another individual or group who were trying to do submersible dives with a craft that was very similar to the Titan, of
Yep.
like composite materials like carbon fiber and titanium. And he was telling those guys, according to him, like very matter of factly, if you get in that thing and you try to go down to those depths, you're gonna die.
Yep.
Right. And he expresses regret that he wasn't able to say anything to the people at Ocean Gate because he didn't really know them.
Right.
He'd only like once he found out about like how they made the
Mm-hmm.
submersible and how they designed it, that's when he was kind of horrified.
Yeah.
Other details as well, like they were using a $30 game controller.
Right. Well, actually, it's a $90. It's so that's also been one of those things that people have pointed out is it's not a PlayStation. People are calling it a PlayStation remote. It is not. It's a Logitech
Oh, it
game
was a
remote.
Logitech. Okay,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
those
It
are a
was
little more
yeah. They
expensive.
found now the thing is they've pulled it off of Amazon because it has terrible reviews. It's a $99 Logitech game controller, and some of the reviews on it are pretty bad.
So they confirmed it was a Logitech.
Yeah.
I didn't know that because yeah, I only
Mhm.
heard that it was a game controller. It was $30. I was like, wait a minute, PlayStation controllers are $60.
Yep. Nope. It's a Logitech control. It was a Logitech
Yeah,
aftermarket controller. It's like
and
$99 on
trust
Amazon.
me, folks listening at home, I know the price of a PlayStation controller. Believe
Yeah.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, 59.99
And
at GameStop.
yeah, exactly. And this goes back to like the controller. I even when they mention it, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, it's not a bad idea to use a pre-existing controlling system, right? That doesn't bother me because the controller was never going to be your problem. But I do think it's indicative of saying, hey, you were trying, you were doing something. He even the guy who created the sub even admitted that he broke rules while making the sub because he wanted to be innovative.
He was boasting about it. He was
Yeah.
boasting about foregoing safety regulations. He found that
Mm-hmm.
the certification process for these
Mm-hmm.
submersibles was very archaic and overly bureaucratic. And he was bragging about how he was a rule breaker,
Yeah.
how he didn't care about the safety regulations because he wanted to be innovative and
Mm-hmm.
inspirational. And
Yeah.
there was also, I don't know if you know about this, but there was also a case where, he gave a speech where he was talking about how he wanted to provide opportunities for people of various diverse backgrounds. And in doing
Yes.
so, he wound up actually firing one of his head engineers who actually, back in 2018, who actually raised concerns about the view. I guess the viewing port
Mm-hmm.
was only certified for like something like 1,500 feet. And they were going down to 4,000. And the head
4,000.
engineer
Yeah. Mm-mm.
was kind of raising a stink about it, so he got fired. And then the CEO was like, "Yeah, we don't need 50-year-old white guys
Yeah.
on our team." I'm like, "Well, I don't care how old they are or what race they are. I want the best engineer money can. This is a submersible going down 4,000 feet.
Yeah.
It's got to be safe. It's got you can't have any cutting corners going on with
Mm-hmm.
something like that. That's so when I
Yep.
was finding out all these details about the CEO, I'm like, dude, Mother Nature and the ocean doesn't give a crap about your innovation or your inspiration for no. These are
Nope.
depths at 4,000 feet. If something messes up, you're donezo.
Oh yeah. No, exactly. Like
Yeah.
this is what made the whole maybe they're still alive angle the more preposterous the more I thought about it. Once I heard about the hydrophone information, right? The Malaysia airline disappearance. There is a reason to people talked about seeing a fireball, but there is a reason to look for survivors and for the plane
Mhm.
because planes can land even if they can crash land, you can still have survivors, right? It isn't a you're done situation. If you have a catastrophic failure on a car, you can still find survivors. There's a potential.
Pull over
Yeah,
on the shoulder, walk away.
yeah. There's the potentiality for survivors in
Yeah.
all of these events. There's zero potentiality for survivors when you're
Mm-mm.
4,000 feet underwater and you have a catastrophic failure.
Mm-mm. Yeah, what are you
If
gonna do?
it's
Swim to the top? Yeah, I don't think so.
yeah, like it's one. People are saying, well, maybe they were suffocating and whatever. It's like, well, first of all, they never had 90 hours of air. That's again, where that number came from seems a little sketchy to me to begin with.
Yeah.
It feels like this was drawn out. But more importantly, you throw that hydrophone information in there. It's like, so the same time you lose 2 critical systems, you hear a very substantial bang on hydrophones in the same area.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you don't got to be a genius to say that's the sub imploding. You just don't. And there's no recovering of anything at that point. Not at that depth.
You're just obliterated.
Yeah.
Completely obliterated. Like, I don't know if people fully understand. It's not like a situation where there's a failure in the submarine and then there's a leak and then water slowly starts being taken in by. No, it doesn't work like that. When something implodes like that at those depths, how'd you say it, Jason? It's like the speed of sound in all directions coming in onto you.
Exactly. What I mean, it is the air is being compressed by the surrounding water at supersonic speeds. These people never even knew there was a problem.
No,
it was over. Their brain couldn't even comprehend what had happened.
It's like 1 second you're alive, next second, how'd you
you're
describe
checking
it?
in. Yeah. You're sitting there. You may have heard like a creaking noise, which may not have necessarily even set anything off. Next thing you know, you're checking in with St. Peter.
Yeah.
Like you don't even realize, you don't have time for your brain to comprehend that something bad has happened. Have you ever seen videos?
I paid all these hundreds of thousands of dollars to go down to these depths to see the Titanic. Hey, Jesus, what are you doing here?
Yeah, exactly.
Shoot, I'm dead, aren't I?
Yeah, exactly. Wow, the Titanic's much nicer than I thought it would be. Oh,
yeah,
I get it. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever seen videos of like metal 55-gallon drum barrels collapsing under 1 bar pressure at normal atmosphere, right? These are science experiments that are done all the time. I think I think it was Mythbusters did a thing on an old railroad car that imploded because of a pressure differential, just 1 atmosphere. When you see these things implode, it is terrifying to see these metal drums just that's under one atmospheric pressure. That's on the surface of the earth. You go 4,000 feet down, it's hundreds of times more powerful. It's essentially, I think you're under, I forget what the atmosphere is exactly, but it's like 400 times more pressure. These people, they were liquefied basically instantly.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be dramatic or gross. This is just what happened. These people were turned into liquid at supersonic speeds. And the problem is, everyone who has any understanding of this situation knew it. There is no way that this was not understood Sunday night, which goes back to why did the news media portray it as they could be just stranded at the bottom of the ocean and they're looking for them, when that's clearly not what was happening. That's my problem.
Yeah.
Now, we could easily say they were deliberately trying to drag it out because it's good ratings. Right? Let's be honest. I think that's a fair argument. But what did they miss? What was completely ignored this week while they were doing it? Let's start with what may be the least important of these. So Hunter Biden reaches a plea deal on 3 different federal crimes, 2 charges of tax evasion and 1 gun crime. Specifically, it was, I had it here. The gun crime was that he lied on an application form. Now, the thing is, what's worse is we know that he's had other gun crimes. Like, we know that. But this is what they're going with. These are 3 federal crimes, one of which, the gun one, could give him up to 10 years in prison. He's going to walk on all of them. He's getting probation for all of these. And
can you give us a little bit more detail about what he did exactly with the gun crime? Because I haven't been following that. I've been following this submarine story too much.
No, I understand. Yeah. Which is
part of the point. Yeah.
Part of the point.
Yeah.
So with the gun crime, what they nailed him on was that he lied on his application to purchase a gun about his drug use. And And that carries with it years. Interesting point here is Kodak Black's lawyer literally just went on Twitter and responded to all this saying Hunter Biden took a plea deal, but Kodak Black was charged for the exact same crime and he got 3 years.
I see. Did they ever say what kind of gun he was trying to buy, by the way?
I forget off the top of my head, but here's the problem. He bought it. He lied. And by the way, this gun was disposed of near he threw it away near a school in a trash can, and his girlfriend at the time, which was his late brother's widow, went and retrieved it. And the Secret Service helped cover it up. This isn't a theory. We know this happened.
His girlfriend is his late brother's widow?
At the time, yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Oh, no, dude. It's Hunter Biden is literally...
That's kind of weird.
Oh, dude. Looking into Hunter Biden is like Jerry Springer on meth. It is nuts.
They used to do that in ancient times. I mean, some biblical figures who kind of did that. So, I mean, it's not so... Maybe he's just wants to take care of his... Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird to us because it has very different connotations. Like there's a difference in how it's
weird.
Yeah, it's just weird. And it's legit. Well, there's a lot weird with the Biden family, and we'll probably do an episode. I'll do like a standalone episode just talking about some of the charges. But if Ashley Biden's diary, which the FBI has now confirmed is actually Ashley Biden's diary, if it's to be believed, there's good reason to believe that that Joe Biden sexually assaulted his children, like just straight up. There's no reason. I can't even hide it any other way. Which
you're gonna have to do a solo episode and present all that. I mean, I'll definitely be down to listen. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's insane. Like this is crazy stuff. But the reason the Hunter Biden story is important isn't just it's because it's the president's son. No. Hunter Biden, and we will do a whole episode on this as well, because there's plenty of people doing great jobs on it. Hunter Biden is literally the go-between between, and this we've learned the last 2 weeks with numerous whistleblowers saying, and of course we've known this for years. Tony Bobolinsky, Hunter Biden's business partner, came out and said this during the election, saying that Hunter Biden is the go-between between Joe Biden and multinational corporations, as well as other governments, in bribery schemes, as well as Joe Biden's brother, Hunter's uncle. This is how they launder money to Joe Biden. So that's why Hunter's is a big deal. It's not just, it's the president's son, it's a presidential scandal. No. Hunter Biden is the money man in a money laundering scheme from around the world, which includes Ukraine, which I'm going to get back to in a second. The other really big story, the second really big story that came out this week, was John Durham came out and did his testimony before Congress about his report.
Mm-hmm.
I have links to the entire 3.5 hour thing below. Again, assuming YouTube will allow me to share these things. I'm going to sum up everything that John Durham said. And it was about, and Durham did the investigation into the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, which Bob Mueller said was a hoax. That's what prompted this whole investigation, right? The Mueller report, where they spent $40+ million investigating this Trump-Russia collusion for him to come out and say there was never anything here. So Durham goes in and says, okay, how did we get to this point if there was never anything here? And again, if you were following this in depth, you knew a lot of this to begin with, but what he confirmed was the Steele dossier, which was the crux for all of this, was purchased by Hillary Clinton in her campaign from a foreign spy. It wasn't even laundered, because one of the original claims was it was laundered to the FBI, so the FBI thought it was legitimate. They didn't. The Obama administration knew what Hillary Clinton was doing. They gave it to the FBI. The FBI knew what it was from day one. They never vetted it. They lied to the FISA court and they altered documents to support their ongoing pursuit of this supposed uh, you know, conference between Russia and Trump, which never existed. To say very simply, the FBI created false evidence in order to spy on a political opponent of a sitting president and to illegally spy on other citizens, not just Trump, other citizens. The only crimes in this whole collusion bit was done and performed by the FBI and the Democratic National Committee. No one's gone to jail for this. No one's lost their job for this. I don't care how you feel about Trump. This should scare the ever-loving crap out of you. Because this is the FBI saying, just throwing all, and again, the episode we're going to do on this stuff is going to be much more in depth because everyone's saying Obama, Clinton, FBI, Democrat Party. It's way bigger than that. But at this level, what we need to say is the FBI was a political operative for the last 6 years. They lied to the FISA courts. They withheld exculpatory information. They threw people in jail. They spied on people for political means, for political ends. This wasn't at no point did anybody actually think any crimes had been committed. And the worst, and when people, well, but didn't Trump's son go talk to a Russian or have a meeting with a Russian lawyer? Oh, you mean the Russian lawyer who works for the same law firm that Hillary Clinton used to hire Steele to get that dossier? Oh, you mean that attorney? Right? Like I said, we'll do a whole video on it, but it is insane. What this should be the number one scandal of the last 40 years. And if you spend any time looking into it, you realize this is a much bigger issue. This is not about red and blue politics. This is much deeper.
For people listening at home who might think that Jason is just a right-wing guy, because you and I talk a lot about politics off the air. Jason's got plenty of stuff to say about the Republicans as well. You know, he's not bound by any kind of party loyalty or anything like that.
Nope. No. This is a bigger issue. This is much larger than just Trump and Biden, red versus blue. This ultimately will tie into the next thing I'm about to say. The next really, really big issue that's happened this week that no one's talking about. BlackRock, JP Morgan, a few other financial institutions have, again, link is in the description below. They've reached a deal to help essentially rebuild Ukraine after the war. Now, you may say, well, that's wonderful. I mean, that's nice. We're going to come to the aid of these people. Well, here's the thing. The World Bank estimated that Ukraine would need $411 billion to rebuild after the war, and that's only going to go up the longer this war goes on, right? $411 billion. That money is going to go through JP Morgan and BlackRock. Here's the worst part. One of the things that was discussed in this article is government seed funds. So they're going to create these funds, and the seed money is going to go in, and then all these other investors are going, are going to come in, and they'll put in the rest of the money, and it's all going to flow through BlackRock. It's all going to flow through JP Morgan Chase. Well, the thing is, government seed money comes from where? Donnie, I'll give you 3 guesses, but you're only going to need 1.
Taxpayers?
Correct. Now, the next great question would be, well, it's a grant, right? Or it's a fund. So it's an investment. Certainly, BlackRock would then need to turn around and JP Morgan, they'd have to pay the government back for that seed money, right? We're investors. That's how investment works. Ask me if government seed money is always repaid back.
Is it, Jason
nope,
McLean?
Almost never.
Really?
Never, ever actually paid back. In fact, oftentimes that's the entire understanding, is it's there to help start something so that private investors can come in and reap the benefit of it.
And then what does the government benefit from this kind of transaction, Jason?
That's an interesting question that you asked there,
Hmm.
Donnie Cho. I knew we didn't keep you around because of your pretty face. That's a benefit. See, this is where we're going to do an entire episode on it as well, because there's another story this week from BlackRock. So James O'Keefe, they're releasing videos they have of a BlackRock employee explaining why things like war is good for their business. Right? We all think wars, military industrial complex, making bombs, guns, and bullets, and other war material. Right? Here's the thing: it's not just that. And this guy very explicitly talks about how cheap it is to buy a senator. He talks about buying senators, how cheap they are, and how they make money off of these human tragedies. He points out Ukraine. Well, Ukraine is a pivotal linchpin in wheat and other goods and services, like particularly food.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if Ukraine is not able to send out all the wheat that it does, then the cost of those goods and services go up. They're able to make money off of that. They're able to predict, and if they know when a war is coming, and they always do, they're able to sell certain things short or dump stocks at a particular time and then buy them back at lower prices. There were people who made hundreds, not millions, not hundreds of millions, hundreds of billions of dollars after 9/11. Because they sold short, which has prompted a lot of people to ask, how in the hell did they know that was why would you sell that all that short if they didn't know anything was coming?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not necessarily I'm not a, they had special thermite kind of guy. I'm not. I think the answer to if there is a conspiracy around 9/11, I think the answer is a lot more obvious than people want it to be. By the way, that story came out 2 weeks ago that the CIA actually had a program, and many of the hijackers for 9/11 were a part of that program. So we'll come back to that one too. Like I said, I think the answer is actually a lot more obvious than we want it to be. But back to essentially Ukraine and becoming the piggy bank for these companies. It's not just that BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, things like that are invested in military hardware, like say Lockheed Martin, who is definitely profiting off of this war in Ukraine, as is Raytheon, as is everyone else. They profit off of rebuilding it. So let me ask you this. Would you like to know that the person who's building bombs, who's buying senators, making certain that we go and protect the piggy bank of Joe Biden, that the people who make the bombs that are going to be sold to bomb this country into oblivion are also going to be making money rebuilding said country? Isn't that important information?
Yeah. I mean,
Seems like something people would want to know.
I think we call that, I think the word for that is called carpet bagging.
Yes, it is. And it also begs a certain question here, right? This is the bigger question. And again, we're going to address on a later date. Donald Trump was impeached for asking the Ukrainian president, to investigate an allegation made about Joe Biden before Joe Biden was running for president, right? And the allegation was literally presented by Joe Biden himself on camera, saying that he had blackmailed, essentially, Ukraine's government at the time from investigating Burisma at the time that his son worked there. We now have, again, a whole episode going to be on this stuff. We now have confirmation of that this was an entire bribery scheme. But let's go back to Ukraine here. Ukraine is Joe Biden's piggy bank. has been for years. And not just him, a lot of people. There's a lot of stuff going on in Ukraine. It's a lot of people's piggy bank. Isn't it interesting that as soon as Biden becomes president, we have nothing was going on in Ukraine when Trump was president, but as soon as Joe Biden becomes president, we got a war there. And it's a war that could potentially cause World War III. So we're not going to intervene directly, but we are going to send hundreds of billions of dollars in material and funds. And that war keeps dragging and dragging. And we've sent more money to Ukraine as far as funds and material than the Russians spend on a yearly basis for their entire military. Why hasn't this war ended pretty easily? Seems like if you're dropping almost twice the amount of funds into somebody's military coffers, and it's twice what your opponent can spend in a year on their entire military, feels like you should win that one pretty quickly. But they haven't. That's interesting. Seems really odd, doesn't it?
Something smells a little fishy there.
But we can't talk about any of this because, speaking of fish, there's a couple dead billionaires at the bottom of the ocean. And we got to talk about them for another freaking week.
Let me ask you this question then.
Yep.
If none of the stuff with Hunter Biden or the Ukraine stuff or any of this BlackRock stuff were out or were even going on, but then this Titan incident still occurred, do you think it would still get the same amount of coverage? Or
see, that's the question we're asking. Because I think part of me would say, yeah, probably, because if it bleeds, it leads, right?
And it is still, and it's also on a visceral level, it is a fascinating story regardless, right? Because you got a story of, well, it involves the Titanic.
Yep.
You've got an overconfident, eccentric
billionaire
rich
building it.
Who, I mean, just a story of how he just forgoes all the safety precautions just because he wants to inspire the future generations, goes down to 4,000 feet and just gets vaporized by the ocean, you know?
Yep.
It's compelling. It's interesting.
Is. No, it really is. And I think there's an argument to be made that this would still have happened had none of this gone on, right?
Yeah.
However, it's also possible that we got to the point we are now Monday or Tuesday, and then it just became about the submersible and about the drama of the guy. Like, that's also a possibility that they said, okay, look, here's the evidence we have. It is more than likely probable that they have passed away, tragically, with this thing imploded on them at supersonic speeds. And then the drama is about the drama that we're having right now. It's also very possible that this was drug. Again, was it drug out to do this? I can't say that it was. I can't say that it wasn't. My problem is we live in a world where this is even a possibility. We live in a world where we're discussing this. At no point do we consider, oh, the news media just didn't understand what was going on, although that's definitely part of it as well. Any competent reporter would have understood, hey, why don't we go ask somebody who knows what they're doing or talking about, what's the story here? What happened? So at no point are we discussing this being an accident or a mistake. It is deliberate one way or the other. They just want, either because they wanted ratings off of it or they wanted to hide a legitimate reason to hide these other stories. That's the angle we're taking. And it's not because we're being it's not because we're being less than gracious. It's because that is legitimately the most possible option for what we've observed, for what we've witnessed this week.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. Regardless of why they did it, they absolutely did it. Because you know what's worse? You can have your cake and eat it too. They can talk about this sub and make it a point of interest, and then still talk about all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
Like this can be done at the same time, and yet they don't.
And they've also spent a lot of time focusing on other stories that are pretty dumb, objectively. So,
Some Kardashian
yeah,
screwed
some kind of
somebody or
celebrity
whatever.
scandal or
Yep.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they'll spend more time on Taylor Swift than they'll ever spend on
Hunter
what is
Biden.
on Hunter Biden. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't care about Hunter Biden himself. I mean, he's not the issue. The issue is what he is.
Mhm.
It's not just that he's the president's son. It's that he is clearly the linchpin in a money laundering scheme, in a bribery scheme that obviously is affecting international policy and being used to make people with unfathomable amounts of money even more unfathomable amounts of money off of you and off of the suffering of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. That's the story. And they'll never spend that time on it.
Mhm.
And they'll be like, but we needed to talk about Taylor Swift's red carpet debut, or this rapper did this thing, or Trump had 2 scoops of ice cream, and we need to talk about that for 3 hours.
Yep.
Mother effer, we just sold Ukraine to BlackRock and JP Morgan. By the way, I didn't even mention the fact that we got more emails on JP Morgan Chase. They just got fined $4 billion was it 4 billion or 4 million? No, they were fined $4 million. I'm sorry, the billion was something else entirely.
Which is like chump change to them.
Which is right, for deliberately deleting like tens of thousands of emails that were involved in securities investigations. Oh,
Mhm.
by the way, also this week, Jeffrey Epstein. More information about Jeffrey Epstein and his connection to JP Morgan Chase. You didn't get any of it. None of it. Not a lick of it got any real news. And if it wasn't the sub, it would have been something else. That's the problem. It would have been something else. And we all know it. And that's the fundamental issue. The news media, and this is left and right. Yes, on the right, there are independent firms that will release this information.
Mhm.
But like Fox is going to give you some of this stuff, but they're not going to give you all of it. They're not going to give you some of the more damning material because they're just the other side of this.
Yeah, they're still too tied into everything.
Yeah. Well, their money comes from BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. Like this is, and again, when we do the whole DEI initiative thing that I'll be doing here shortly, this is the thing people need to understand. When you talk about these large multinational corporations,
Mhm.
their money does not come from you buying their products. It's not really what they need to survive. To have these multinational corporations exist, it's these investment firms. These investment firms control everything. And what's worse, they own each other. This is what it's a shell game. It's like when you go to buy glasses, right?
Mhm.
And you see all these different brands on, and you're like, oh, it's look at all these different brands and names. They're all owned. Almost all of them are owned by the same company. It is the illusion of choice and competition. And here's the thing. The reason these companies got to be as big as they are is because the government made it harder for small businesses to compete. That's the problem. That's the situation we're in. But we will never have that conversation in the public sphere because a Kardashian did something, a submarine full of millionaires imploded, somebody dissed somebody on a track, and we'll never have the real conversation. Except for places like Jason McLean Questions Everything. With me, Donnie Cho, and other guests, now that we're sort of on our own doing things, we're going to have some other guests on here, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So like, follow, and subscribe for more conversations. Again, we're here to have a real conversation and ask real questions about the world that we actually live in, not the version that we're being sold. So, like, follow, and subscribe. We'll catch y'all next time.